Chapter 21. Fidelity. I arrived at the beach house an hour and a half later, enveloped in thick fog that almost obscured the road from my view. 5:14 a.m. I glanced at the clock as I reached for the key at the door. The humidity in the air was so thick I could almost feel my clothes soaking wet. I stepped inside, turned on the heating because the house was cold, took off my clothes, put on pajamas and a robe. Then I sat down on the living room couch. Apathetic. I had run away. Was she calling me dead? Maybe, but the truth was that the last 10 years had passed calmly, without any upheavals, in a lazy way. And at this moment, frankly, I didn't know what to feel. Seeing everything I was sure of slipping out of my control. I saw everything that had happened and began to wonder to what extent the situation with Laura had been orchestrated by her. Things seemed to happen with the precision she wanted, neither sooner nor later, without surprises. They just unfolded before her eyes, as if the situation had always been there. It was I who always seemed like a newcomer, who never managed to surprise and was entangled in something I stumbled upon. And why had she done that to me? Without an ounce of resentment, pain, disdain, nothing. Simply stating my truths, without any kind of feeling, snatching my conquest away from me, which I had not even believed was mine, and taking it for herself. Cigarettes followed. Just like thoughts, sleep just didn't come. The sun rose, dissipating the fog, and the late morning became full of light and radiance. But it didn't change my mood. Near noon, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car arriving. I went to the door and, somewhat surprised, saw Laura and Lilith arrive with some bags in hand. Lilith was in front. She came up to me, hugged me, brought her mouth to my ear, and whispered,
"Did you think I would leave you here alone? You couldn't cook anything decent even if your life depended on it. I don't want you mistreated, not even by yourself."
And she headed towards the kitchen to put down the bags. Laura passed me by, giving me a kiss on the cheek and following Lilith into the kitchen. I might as well have stayed in Lisbon, in the end. I hadn't run away from anything. Everything was still the same here, and within me was the suspicion that, wherever I went, everything would be there and it would be unavoidable. I resigned myself. I returned to my previous pastime of smoking cigarettes on the living room couch. Unfortunately, I could no longer afford to think. With two women chatting cheerfully in the kitchen, after 2 or 3 cigarettes, Lilith came out of the kitchen and sat down next to me. She looked at me with a smile, waiting for me to decide to say something. I didn't want to open my mouth, and we remained at an impasse. Her smile broke me after a while. I searched for something obvious to say that wouldn't indicate that I was giving in. "Laura," I asked dryly.
"She's making lunch. She's a great cook, did you know? And she loves to cook."
"Oh really?"
"Yes. She told me on the way."
"You must have learned a lot about her, huh?"
"Quite a bit. You know, sometimes we can get to know a person better in an hour than in a whole lifetime."
I fell silent again, but I had already given in once, which was what she wanted.
"Miguel, tell me, do you think we have to be faithful to each other?"
"What do you mean?"
"Just answer."
"I don't know. I don't know what this is that we have, if we have anything at all. I don't know why Laura is in the kitchen making lunch. I don't know why the hell I am here. I don't know anything."
"You know, Miguel, we should be faithful, yes. But fidelity is to an idea. It's a bond, a concept that simply implies that two beings trust each other completely. And I trust you completely."
She looked at me, with the same smile. A smile that seemed absolutely sincere, full of companionship. "Why?"
"Because I know you. And I know I can. But what about you, Miguel? Do you trust me?"
It took me some time to give the first answer that came to mind. "Yes."
"Miguel, your body is just your body. And the fact that you're in it doesn't make it more valuable, except to yourself. You've been with several women and your body has never ceased to be yours, right?"
"Right. But where are you going with this?
My body has been with countless men and women. There's nothing under the sun that's new to me. I like to be with someone when I want that someone. But I never stop being faithful to myself. I never surrender my body, which is mine. I share it. But, Miguel, I only give my spirit to those I trust implicitly, even if I don't share my body.
She let the idea sink in for me and then asked,
Tell me, Miguel, if I'm faithful in spirit to someone, and if that someone is faithful to me, then the implicit trust is there. So what does it matter what I do with my body? That someone knows that the surrender of the body is not the surrender of the spirit. Fidelity remains intact. Do you think a victim of rape is unfaithful just because her body was with someone else?
I remained silent.
Miguel, there are those who are with many people and are faithful, and those who are with only one person their whole life and are not faithful even to themselves. Who do you think is right? The one who follows the rules, or the one who enjoys and shares that enjoyment with those who are faithful?
She was right, and I knew it, and denying it was hypocritical on my part.
I'm faithful to you, Miguel. From my point of view, I am and will be. Do you think I would be here if I didn't trust you? Let me leave you with one more thought. Do you need to make sure that my offspring comes from you? Do you need to ensure any dominance? Miguel, I will never want to dominate you, and I will never let myself be dominated. When you want certainty, ask.
She got up and left me alone with my thoughts again. While I felt the house being invaded by the smell of a stew, I remembered a phrase my father often said. The only certainty is death. But with her even that was uncertain. What were mere concepts to someone who founded civilizations? How many different concepts had she already lived? How many ways of seeing the world? And all correct in the light of her time. Is a concept a reflection of truth? It is, but from a certain point of view, outside of it. Truth exists on its own, and suddenly, my actions, since yesterday afternoon seemed too petty, poor. I put out the cigarette I was smoking, got up and went to the kitchen to join them. The two of them were busy. I looked at Laura. In any other situation, I would have some feeling of guilt towards her, as if in some way, I had taken advantage of her to unload my anger and frustration. But Lilith made sure that didn't happen. Yesterday's conversation had been enlightening. I hadn't been the hunter. She hadn't been the prey. We were just there, in that moment. I looked at her without regrets. She looked up and smiled. She came over to me, gave me a light kiss on the lips, and asked in a genuinely concerned tone,
Are you okay?
I am. She looked at me with a mischievous look.
Really?
Really, seriously, don't worry. She moved away, returning to the stew that made my mouth water. As she passed Lilith, she gave her a fleeting kiss on the cheek. Lilith looked at me and smiled. I smiled. How far Laura was today from that somewhat insecure woman who almost cried last night for someone who clearly didn't deserve her. Today she was here, full, secure, feminine, interesting. Undoubtedly, she too had been touched by a goddess. She just didn't know it.